What if I told you that all myths, folklore, and things like alien stories are all attempts at people learning about or uncovering on accident their inner technology slash tools? So, when people talk about aliens, when people talk about gods, you can tell that sometimes it's about them recalling memories, and you can tell that it's something where they're recalling an experience. And either way, it's about humans attempting to kind of unconsciously explore those things. Hi, I'm Nicole. I am a philosopher of infinity, which means that it's not a title, it is the lover of wisdom, and then infinity is the infinite mechanics that I explore and I continue to look into. So when you look at this artwork behind me, you can see that it is the Mary, Jesus, and, people celebrating, and there's more symbolism upon symbolism upon symbolism, right? But there's the person who was figuring things out. There was the person who was commissioned. A lot of these were for churches and things like that. But they didn't just do something direct like a story. There's parts of that person in there when they're exploring things. You can find things like colors. You can find things like, for example, a lot of this has a lot to do with not necessarily Christianity. All these things up here, like there are angels, but they're like not quite angels. There's also the grapes. There's so many different things going on in this. And so obviously those stories that we read are very much like, just a speaking version of making these. And I am like that. I make visual art. I made these, for example. But at the same time, I speak about all the things I remember. So it's very verbal. So it would be like a book, but instead people are hearing it. And there are most of the origins of philosophy was about discussing things. It wasn't about writing a book that people would read and then discuss. It was like retelling of stories and everyone thinking of new things, and it's like a back and forth, and it grows. So each time you talk about a story, for example, I always bring up Plato's story of Atlantis. He brought that up specifically to help people when they were struggling with the dynamics of certain policies when they were talking about things. And so it was not expected of every time they come together, it was not expected to have one thing in mind. Like he wanted and was hoping for it to be a launching pad. So the way I look at these things is I feel like when a human has created something like this, whether they were commissioned or they just did it out of love, this is probably commissioned. What happens is you get to benefit from that person exploring those things. And it's not just about craftsmanship and the skills that they had. That's a different beautiful thing to look at. But it can be. But it's like getting a glimpse of how that person translates their inner world, right? And since the earth and, well, I don't want to call it earth anymore, but our societies are starving from having, this kind of back and forth and things like that. I always want to do that, whether people are not ready for it or they are ready for it. I always want to provide that. So if you are interested, let me know, and let me know your thoughts on how you found your technology and parts of you when you look at things, because I see people loving pieces of art or loving even like a movie or a celebrity, and they kind of don't see that what they love is something that they're unlocking inside themselves. So if you've had any experiences like that, I would love to hear that in the comments. And yeah, have a nice day.